Welcome to Informer. Let's begin with today's story. When I was growing up, I never thought my life would be like a crazy crime TV show. But sometimes life surprises you. One moment everything's great, the next it's all falling apart like a house of cards in a big storm. Let me start from the beginning. My name's Richard Carter, and I was born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, near Forsyth Park. I loved the trees with Spanish moss and the warm sea breeze. It made me never want to leave. As a kid, I liked reading and doing well in school to make my parents proud rather than causing trouble like other teenagers. I wasn't the most popular guy in high school, but I had a few good friends, and that was fine with me. I went to the University of Georgia to study law. I did really well, like always. I was excited to go back home to Savannah and make a difference. That's when I met Evelyn. Just thinking about her made me feel like a teenager in love. She worked as a real estate agent at a fancy place downtown, selling expensive old houses to people from out of town. She had beautiful hair, blue eyes, and a smile that could brighten up the whole city. We got along right away. We both loved Savannah and each other. Within a year, we bought a nice little house in the Ardsley Park neighborhood. It had a picket fence, a nice lawn, and everything else you'd expect. I was junior partner at the prestigious Davis Fleming law firm downtown, and Evelyn was killing it selling those overpriced homes to Yankees looking to retire in the South. For a while there, life was just about perfect. I should have known something was up the night I spotted that lacy little number peeking out from Evelyn's lingerie drawer. I'd been rummaging around for a box of cufflinks for this big corporate dinner I had coming up when my eyes landed on that sinful scrap of red lace and silk. Now, I'd seen Evelyn model some racy little outfits for me over the years, but this one was something else entirely. Thin little straps, barely there cups, and a little V-shaped split that wouldn't have left much to the imagination, if you know what I mean. The kind of thing you'd expect to see in one of those Secrets catalog magazines, not my sweet southern belle wife's wardrobe. At first, I couldn't help but feel a little thrill at the thought of her surprising me with that little number for a special night. We'd been married going on 6 years at that point, but the spark was still alive and well, if you catch my drift. I figured she must have picked it up for an upcoming anniversary or maybe my birthday, wanting to renew that youthful lust we had when we first got hitched. So I just shut that drawer quickly and tried to push it out of my mind. Didn't want to ruin any sexy little surprise she might have had planned for me. Weeks went by, though, and that lingerie incident was slowly fading from my memory as the usual grind of work and life took over. It wasn't until I got back from a 2-week business trip to Jacksonville that the whole nasty truth came spilling out. The firm was opening up a new branch over there, and I'd been charged with getting everything up and running smoothly. Spent most of those 2 weeks holed up in my hotel room reviewing contracts and prepping for the grand opening gala we were hosting. That's where I first met Leah. Fresh out of college, bright-eyed and keen as a whip. The partners had hired her to be my legal assistant and right-hand gal for the Jacksonville setup. From the moment I laid eyes on her, I could barely concentrate on anything other than those tan-toned legs of hers peeking out from under her pencil skirt. I know. I'm a happily married fella. Shame on me for even having thoughts like that. But you need to know I'm just a regular person, and Leah was, well, she was special. She was alive and graceful, with bright green eyes and thick red-brown curls that seemed to catch all the light in a room. She seemed a bit shy and liked books, but the way she moved, the gentle sway of her hips as she walked, made it hard not to notice her. When we were in Jacksonville, I couldn't stop thinking about Leah. I imagined running my fingers through her soft curls and holding her close. I pictured her long, tanned legs wrapped around me as I pushed her against the hotel room wall. I had to work hard to stay professional and not let my lustful thoughts show. But all the while, I reminded myself of Evelyn and how hurt she would be if she knew what I was thinking. I loved my wife more than anything. She was my Savannah Peach, my Southern Belle, the one who supported me since the early days when I was working hard to become a partner. Just picturing her bright smile and the way her golden hair caught the sun's rays was usually enough to drown out Leah's siren song. At least it was enough to keep me from doing anything stupid while we were in Jacksonville. Leah and I worked closely and tently, all thoughts of romance shoved forcibly to the side. She was a damn good assistant. I'll give her that. Bright, eager to learn, always putting in overtime without even being asked. We pulled those long hours together, and by the time that grand opening party rolled around, everything was squared away and running like a well-oiled machine. It was an open bar kind of night, and I'll admit, I overindulged a bit in the celebratory spirits. Just enough to loosen my lips and my restraint around the unbelievably sexy Leah. As the night was winding down, I remember pulling her aside in the empty hotel ballroom, the dim lights casting odd shadows across her flawless features. "You know, you did one hell of a job prepping for all this," I slurred, standing perhaps a bit too close as I spoke. "The partners are going to be real impressed when I tell them how invaluable you were." "Why, Mr. Carter?" she replied with a hint of a Texan drawl. "You give me too much credit. I just did what any good assistant would do." I laughed then, too loud, as I often did when drinking. "Leah, trust me, you are anything but just any assistant." And before I could stop myself, before that voice of reason reminding me of sacred vows could intervene, I reached out and boldly tucked an errant strand of her fiery hair behind her ear. She stilled at my touch. Those emerald eyes locked intensely on mine, and for a blind, searing moment I thought she might kiss me. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket, startling us both. I pulled it out to see Evelyn's face smiling up at me from the display, and reality came crashing down like a cold, harsh wave. "Everything okay, Richard?" Leah asked softly, regaining her professionalism. I swallowed hard and straightened my tie, giving her what I hoped was a reassuring look. "Yeah, everything's just swell. Why don't you head on up to your room and get some rest? Big day of traveling tomorrow?" She nodded, flashing me one last enigmatic smile before turning and sauntering away, hips swaying hypnotically. I watched her leave while my phone kept buzzing in my shaky hand. When she was out of sight, I finally answered, pretending everything was okay, even though I felt really guilty. "Hey, sorry, we were just finishing up the party. You won't believe who was cooking." I tried to distract myself by telling a story about the badly cooked prime rib, but I couldn't stop thinking about my wrongdoing. I promised myself to be better and push away those bad thoughts. If only I knew then how useless those promises were and how they would lead me down a dark path. But I tried to sound positive when talking to Evelyn, adding some jokes to the conversation. "I'll be coming home in 3 days." Evelyn replied with an exaggerated pout that I could practically hear through the phone. "I was hoping you'd be back sooner than that, sugar. This big bed doesn't stay warm for long without you in it." I chuckled, feeling a pang of longing for my beautiful wife. "Well, you know how it goes. Always a few loose ends to tie up with these corporate shindigs. But I'll be home before you know it, Peach. We said our goodbyes and I love yous," my wife's sultry promise of a surprise still dancing in the back of my mind. As I hung up and looked around the now empty hotel ballroom, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment, just when I thought I might get a well-deserved break. The firm had other plans. Little did I know that unwanted summons back to Savannah would be the first domino to fall. The next day, I came home from the airport at around 9 p.m. and thought I'd surprise my darling with some roses and make her one of those candle-lit dinners like we used to do when we were newlyweds. That's when I heard the noises coming from our bedroom. You can probably fill in the blanks from there. My heart just dropped straight into my damn stomach. I crept upstairs, scared to death of what I'd find, but knowing I had to see it with my own eyes. And there she was, my beautiful Evelyn, tangled up with 2 unsavory-looking men I didn't recognize. Let me tell you, in that moment, it felt like the world just stopped spinning for a second. For a while, everything was in a blur, and I couldn't process what I was seeing or hearing. If you'll excuse me, I need a stiff drink to steady these nerves before I tell you the rest of this sorry tale. After that initial shock wore off, slowly, ever so slowly, I backed out of the bedroom, keeping my eyes trained on that horrific scene playing out before me. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone, fingers trembling. I couldn't risk them hearing the ringtone or vibrations if someone tried to reach me. With a shaky hand, I switched it to silent mode, praying the screen wouldn't light up and give me away. I couldn't tear my eyes away, even as the nausea rose in my throat. It was like watching some twisted movie, except the leading lady was my own beloved wife, Evelyn. My Savannah Peach, my Southern belle, reduced to this sordid display of infidelity. The way she moved, The way those strangers touched her, it was all so foreign, so at odds with the woman I thought I knew. I felt like I was seeing something very personal, something I shouldn't be seeing. But I couldn't stop watching, couldn't look away from the mess happening right in front of me. I had to hold on to the railing to stay steady. I wanted to leave the house, get away from this awful situation. But a part of me, a part that enjoys pain, wanted to keep watching, to see how bad things really were. My hands were shaking as I took out my phone and started secretly recording everything, capturing every painful moment. I told myself I was gathering evidence to prove Evelyn's betrayal. But deep down, I knew I was just hurting myself, making the pain last longer. I should have run away and saved myself from this suffering, but instead I stayed there, unable to look away, as the horrible scene unfolded in front of me. The voices, the sounds, it was all too much. I had to get out of there before I lost what little composure I had left. Tearing my gaze away, I hurried down the stairs and out the front door, gulping in the cool night air as I leaned against the porch railing. The weight of what I had just witnessed threatened to crush me. My Evelyn had betrayed me in the most devastating way. And with that realization came a surge of rage, a burning desire for vengeance that I'd never experienced before. I stared down at the phone in my hand, the incriminating video still recording. This was my ammunition. With a shaking hand, I stopped the recording and pocketed the phone. The urge to confront Evelyn right then and there was overwhelming, but I knew I had to play this smart. If I went in there guns blazing, I'd lose any advantage I might have. No, I needed to bide my time, gather more evidence, and figure out just how deep this rabbit hole went. I pushed off the porch railing and stumbled down the steps, my legs feeling like jelly. The streets of Ardsley Park were quiet at this hour, the grand old home standing silent and judgmental in the moonlight. I walked aimlessly, no destination in mind, just needing to put some distance between myself and that house of horrors. I found myself in Forsyth Park, the grand fountain at its center gurgling softly in the night. I collapsed onto a nearby bench, head in my hands, as the weight of it all came crashing down on me. Sobs racked my body, tears streaming down my face as I mourned the life I thought I had, the love I believed was unshakable. I wiped my eyes and stood up, a newfound determination steadying my steps. But first things first, I needed to find out who those men were. I replayed the video, forcing myself to study their faces, their tattoos, any identifying details. One of them had a distinctive scar on his left cheek, the other a tattoo of a snake coiled around his bicep. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I spent the next 2 nights at the mansion on Forsyth Park, a grand old hotel just a stone's throw from where I'd had my breakdown. The opulent surroundings felt like a mockery of my shattered life, but I needed time to think, to plan my next move without the risk of running into Evelyn. I paced the suite like a caged animal, alternating between fits of rage and bouts of despair. The hotel staff must have thought I was some eccentric recluse, holed up in my room all day with the curtains drawn tight. I barely ate, barely slept, my mind consumed with thoughts of revenge. On the second night, I got brave enough to call Evelyn. I sat in the car, parked in the hotel's garage. I took a deep breath and dialed her number, trying to sound cheerful. "Hey, Peach," I said, pretending to be happy. "Just wanted to tell you I'm coming home. I'll be there in about an hour." Evelyn answered, sounding really sweet. "That's great, honey. I've missed you a lot, okay?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel, making my knuckles go white. "Oh, I will. Can't wait to see you, darling." We said our goodbyes, and I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. I started the car and pulled out of the garage. I pulled into our driveway, the house looming before me like some great dark beast. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, trying to gather my composure. Then I took a deep breath, grabbed my suitcase from the back seat, and headed inside. Evelyn was waiting for me in the foyer, a vision in a flowing sundress and a wide, welcoming smile. She threw her arms around me, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "Welcome home, sugar," she purred, her breath hot against my ear. I returned her embrace, fighting back the urge to recoil from her touch. "It's good to be back," I lied, burying my face in her hair to hide my expression. We went through the motions of a happy reunion, me presenting her with a souvenir from Jacksonville, her ushering me to the dining room for a home-cooked meal. I played my part, laughing at her jokes, complimenting her cooking, all the while feeling like I might shatter at any moment. After dinner, I retreated to my study, claiming a need to catch up on some work emails. In reality, I needed space, time to sort through the maelstrom of emotions swirling inside me. I locked the door behind me and collapsed into my leather desk chair, my head in my hands. I don't know how long I sat there, staring blankly at the wall, before a knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. "Richard? Honey, is everything okay?" I cleared my throat, straightening in my chair. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just trying to get through these emails. I'll be up to bed soon." "All right, don't work too hard now. I'll be waiting for you." I waited until I heard the bedroom door close before I let out the breath I'd been holding. I powered up my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keys. It was time to start investigating. I spent hours looking through social media, trying to find any mention of the men from the video. I searched through Evelyn's Facebook friends and Instagram followers, hoping to find a connection. It was boring and hard work, especially since I was so angry. Just when I was about to give up, I found something. One of the men, the one with the snake tattoo, had commented on one of Evelyn's photos a few months ago. It was a simple comment saying she looked good, followed by a winking emoji, but it was a clue. I clicked on his profile, feeling nervous as I waited for the page to load. A quick Google search showed that his company was one of the biggest shipping firms in Savannah. They had connections to the mayor's office and some important clients. I leaned back in my chair, a plan beginning to take shape in my mind. If I was going to take down Evelyn and her lovers, I needed more than just a video. I needed evidence of their corruption, their dirty dealings. And what better place to start than with the man at the top? Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my work at the law firm, using my position to gather information on Hawthorne and his associates. I called in favors, pulled strings, and slowly but surely a picture began to emerge. Hawthorne was involved in some shady business, that much was clear. Money laundering, bribery, even rumors of ties to the mob. And at every turn, there were whispers of his connection to Mayor Ethan Hughes and Judge Alice Whitmore. It was a tangled web of corruption, and Evelyn was right at the center of it. The more I dug, the more I realized that her infidelity was just the tip of the iceberg. She was in deep with these people, and I was determined to bring them all down. I started following Evelyn, tracking her movements and meetings. I tailed her to clandestine rendezvous with Hawthorne and his men, always careful to keep my distance. I snapped photos, recorded conversations, gathering evidence piece by piece. It was during one of these stakeouts that I first crossed paths with Detective Emily Reed. I was parked across the street from a seedy motel on the outskirts of town, watching as Evelyn and Hawthorne disappeared into one of the rooms. I was so focused on the door, waiting for them to emerge, that I didn't even notice the tap on my window until it was too late. I turned to see a woman in a leather jacket, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, flashing a badge at me. The woman from the Savannah Police Department spoke to me. She sounded firm, but not mean. "Can you tell me why you're here, mister?" she asked. "Carter?" I was scared and tried to think of an excuse. I couldn't tell her the truth yet. I needed more time and evidence. So like any good lawyer, I lied. "I'm working on a case," I said, trying to sound confident. "My client suspects their partner of cheating. I'm just trying to get some proof." Detective Reed raised an eyebrow, her gaze flicking to the motel door and back to me. "Is that so? And does this client of yours know you're out here playing private eye?" I swallowed hard, my palms sweating on the steering wheel. "Look, Detective, I'm just trying to do my job. I don't want any trouble." She studied me for a long moment, her dark eyes searching my face. Finally, she sighed and stepped back from the car. "All right, Mr. Carter, I'll let you off with a warning this time, but if I catch you snooping around again, I won't be so lenient. Understood?" I nodded, relief washing over me as she walked away. But even as I watched her go, I knew this was just the beginning. I was in too deep to back out now. I had to see this through, no matter the cost. As the weeks turned into months, I became consumed by my quest for vengeance. I barely slept, barely ate. My every waking moment devoted to gathering evidence against Evelyn and her cohorts. My work at the law firm suffered, my cases piling up as I neglected my duties. But I didn't care. All that mattered was making them pay. I knew I was taking risks, knew that I was walking a dangerous line, but I couldn't stop. Not even when Detective Reed started poking around, asking questions about my whereabouts and my sudden obsession with the Hawthorne case. Should have covered my tracks better. But in my single-minded pursuit of justice, I got sloppy. And that's when everything started to unravel. It was a cool October evening when I made my move. I had followed Evelyn to a secluded cabin on the outskirts of town, watched as she met with Hawthorne and a man I didn't recognize. I moved quietly, holding my camera, determined to catch them doing something wrong. But I didn't realize how far they'd go to keep their secrets. Just as I got near the window, I heard a gun click behind me. "Well, well," a voice said slowly, making me shiver. I turned around slowly, feeling scared, and saw Hawthorne and his men coming out of the shadows. Evelyn was behind them, looking smug with her arms crossed. "Did you really think you could stop us, Richard?" she asked, sounding like she didn't respect me at all. "You, with your little camera and your righteous indignation?" I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could get a word out, pain exploded in the back of my head. I crumpled to the ground, my vision swimming as I struggled to stay conscious. The last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me was Evelyn's face, looming over me like some avenging angel, her voice fading as I slipped into oblivion. I don't know how long I was out, but when I came to, I was tied to a chair in a dank, musty room. My head throbbed, my mouth tasted of blood, and every inch of my body ached. But I was alive. For now, I blinked against the harsh fluorescent light, trying to get my bearings. That's when I heard the footsteps, the creak of a door opening behind me. Hawthorne's voice, cold and mocking. "We've got some things to discuss, you and I." He circled around to face me, flanked by his men. Evelyn was nowhere to be seen. I glared up at him, trying to summon some shred of defiance. "You won't get away with this," I croaked, my voice hoarse and ragged. "I have evidence. I've been watching you." Hawthorne laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, Richard, you really have no idea who you're dealing with, do you? Your evidence, your little investigation, it means nothing. We own this town. The mayor, the judge, the police, they're all in our pocket. And as for you," he leaned in close, his breath hot and fetid against my face, "you're just a loose end, one that needs to be tied up." I struggled against my bonds, panic rising in my throat. This was it. This was how it ended. It didn't end dramatically, but quietly, at the hands of my wife's lover and his guys. I was ready for whatever was coming, but then there was a commotion outside the room. Shouting, gunshots, and people running. Hawthorne and his men looked nervous and grabbed their guns. Then the door burst open and someone I knew came in, holding a gun and looking determined. It was Detective Emily Reed from the Savannah Police Department. "Don't move," she said. She saved me from danger, which was unexpected but very welcome. I'd never been so glad to see a cop in my life. What followed was a blur of activity, Hawthorne and his men surrendering, Detective Reed untying me and checking my wounds, backup arriving to secure the scene. I sat in a daze as the paramedics looked me over, trying to process the fact that I was still breathing. It wasn't until later that I realized that I had been saved. As I sat in the back of an ambulance with a shock blanket around my shoulders, that the full weight of what had happened hit me. My wife, my beloved Evelyn, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way, had been willing to let me die to protect her sordid secrets. I looked up as Detective Reed approached, her face etched with concern. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice soft. I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I don't know anything anymore." She sat down beside me, her presence solid and comforting. "We got them, Richard. Hawthorne, his men, the mayor, the judge, they're all going down. Your evidence, your recordings, it was the break we needed." I nodded, feeling a small flicker of satisfaction amidst the pain. "And Evelyn?" I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Detective Reed sighed, her gaze turning distant. "They caught her. She's going to prison for a long time. They charged her with conspiracy and being involved in trying to hurt someone. She won't be free for many years." I closed my eyes, trying to understand. My wife, who I loved and trusted, turned out to be a criminal. She lied to me. She's like a stranger now. "I'm sorry, Richard," Detective Reed said, putting her hand on my arm. I can't imagine how tough this must be for you, but you did the right thing. You stood up to them, even when it was dangerous. That's brave." I looked at her, really looked, and saw something in her eyes I hadn't noticed before. Respect. Maybe even a bit of admiration. "I couldn't have done it without you, Emily," I said sincerely. "You saved my life." She smiled a real smile, making her whole face light up. "We look out for each other," she said. I took her hand, feeling its warmth. "Partners," I said, looking into her eyes. "I like that." Second story. Husband had an affair with ex. My husband had an affair with his ex-girlfriend, who was also the mother of his 8-year-old son. We've been married for 4 years and have 2 children together. I don't want to lose my family. He's acting really different lately, like he's in a manic or depressed state. We're going to see a doctor on Friday to check his hormone levels and maybe start him on antidepressants. Besides that, I'm wondering if we can fix our marriage and still have a good relationship with his son and his mother. Has anyone else been through something similar?